when I started to hear about China being really a big deal, honestly, I got to go back to college again. I remember in the 90s, like I said, I went to NYU, so I lived in New York City in the 90s. And I remember reading that rich people in Manhattan were all teaching their babies Chinese. And it was like the thing of the ultra rich to, I think you were supposed to like buy Chinese language tapes and like put the headphones on your belly if you had a baby in there. And they were having their little toddlers learn Chinese at the same time they were learning English. And the idea was that because China is going to be the huge power in the future. I didn't think anything of that. I was like, well, yeah, I guess there's a lot of Chinese people, and you know. But over time, I think you've seen, if you've been paying attention, how a lot of our industry and especially manufacturing has gone over to China. And certain agreements were made that broke down the way our products maybe came from Mexico instead of being made in the United States, instead of factory work having gone to Mexico, um, was kind of screwed up by, I think it was NAFTA, because the idea was that if we made no, excuse me, Mexico pay their people a decent wage, there would be no reason for the jobs to go to Mexico, and the factories that had gone there should come back and hire American workers again. But in the end, what happened is those factories left Mexico, did not come back, and they went to China. So now not only Americans couldn't find jobs, neither could Mexicans, because those, so guess where the Mexicans came to get jobs? Here. So now the jobs, the meager jobs for laborers or people who work in factories were now having to be split with people who were now seeking employment from Mexico, and they would come here to find work now. And Americans also needed to find work. And you had a bunch of people on the bottom, again, pitting people against each other for those same jobs. So you had that, and then you know, I don't know how much people know this. Oh, why do I have this on here? I may need another thing in a minute, but let me get rid of that. Um, you, people, Chinese companies would start to buy property. I know they bought property in Manhattan a lot, and that helps to drive out, um, make the regular places not be able to stay. They can't afford the rent. You know what I mean? And every once in a while, you'll hear about a Chinese company buying something in your town if you pay attention. You know, and so people had some inkling in the back that we were getting more involved with China. Yeah. Now, years ago, when I started hearing about people overdosing from this new thing called fentanyl, I couldn't understand it, because when you look it up, they said it was supposed to be pain medication that was only for people who had terminal cancer, because it was so powerful. And it was supposed to be only administered in a hospital setting. So basically, if you had terminal cancer, right, you're in hospice basically, or you're just really at the end, instead of morphine, they're going to give you fentanyl. So let's say you're an elderly person, you're old, you're on your, at the end, You're in the nursing home. They're giving you fentanyl for the pain to make you comfortable until you expire. But that was it. In a hospital setting, given by the people, and wasn't supposed to leave. At some point, they decided to make it okay. Now, they had fentanyl patches, they had fentanyl lollipops that they would give to the elderly in the nursing homes and stuff to say, okay, so you can just administer it by licking as much as you need on the lollipop, you know. So, like I said, that's why it was originally made. Not for people like you break your wrist, here's some fentanyl, because that's what happened to my mom. We were walking down the street, she slipped on some ice, she broke her wrist, she went to the emergency room, they gave her a prescription for fentanyl. They didn't say, oh, okay, well, we'll give you these painkillers, and if it's not enough, come back and get some fentanyl. So whenever they started handing this stuff out, I don't know. But the first I ever heard of it was when Philip Seymour Hoffman died. They had started saying, oh, well, he OD'd on heroin, and they thought maybe it was this new thing, this new mixture of heroin and fentanyl that was going around, because that was way more powerful and it was killing people. But in the end, they determined that he OD'd on regular heroin, and but that was the first I heard of it. So when I started looking it up, and then I'm finding out it's this, I'm like, how did it make the jump from being only administered in a hospital to it being on the streets? Then I read a book. Oh my God, what's the name of that book? It anyway explained how heroin became a thing again in the United States, and it's a good book. I'll try to remember it later on. And it explained how heroin took hold again, and so there became another huge heroin problem in this country. I want to say in the last 15 years, but maybe it was longer than that, but it was this century, yeah. So, the idea that the heroin was making a comeback, and now somehow it was being mixed with this stuff, which if it was, I couldn't understand where it made the jump. Anyways, so then somewhere along the lines, I read that fentanyl comes from China by way of Mexico. And I'm saying to myself, okay, we have a border that's not closed. Not only is it letting in way too many people that we don't have jobs for our own people, but now that border is letting in a shit ton of heroin, but also this other horrible, totally fatal crap is coming through the border, being mixed with heroin, coming over here, but it's from China. Then they started saying that they had labs in Mexico. How the hell are you going to have fentanyl labs in Mexico? Apparently they're buying the supplies from China, right? So maybe I had wrong information. Why don't you go ahead and look it up? But that's what I believe to be the case. We have lockdowns. We've been in lockdown since almost this time last year, right? 4th of July comes. There's fireworks like you've never seen. Videos were all over the internet of ridiculous fireworks displays, illegal fireworks displays all over this country, right? We're in lockdown. There's a virus that, as far as we know, originally came from China. And there's fireworks going off like crazy in this country. Illegal fireworks. Where do fireworks come from? China. So as locked down as we were, illegal substances, in this case fireworks, were still getting to us. You know what else was still getting here? Drugs. Did people stop ODing? Did fentanyl go away? No. That's why I say China is not our friend, and I mean the Chinese government. You can kill people by having a war, or you could kill people by sending over drugs that they're addicted to, or sending over a bad drug that they're not addicted to yet, but that gets mixed in with the drug that the people are addicted to. Okay? President Trump did not like the way we did business with China. He wanted to renegotiate things. He wanted to put them on notice. He wanted to get our manufacturing jobs back. He was, if anything, very I don't want to say averse. He was very suspicious of China's influence, China's business dealings with us, and he thought it was affair. I remember him talking about things I don't understand, about how China somehow, I think he said they devalued their own money, and somehow it made it unfair. Now, he would know that, I would not. He's a businessman. He did business all over the world. He would know about those things. I would not. If that's true, whatever. Anyway, he felt like we had bad deals with China, and he wanted to renegotiate them to make our country better. Give us a chance again. Make America great again. Right? So the media flipped all that, make America great again, to be about race and all this kind of shit. But it was about getting people jobs back, getting people manufacturing jobs back, getting back to a time where the average American just go out there and work. And there'd be jobs, you just walk down to the factory and apply. And there'd be a job right there. And that's what he was talking about. That's what the people who were voting for him were talking about. But they twisted it and they made it into racism and all kinds of xenophobia and nationalism, because you want to make your country great, right? And by nationalist, they throw that word out to make you think Nazis. And you get a handful of skinhead type actual white supremacists who also wanted Trump to win, and they make it so that everybody who like Trump is a white supremacist, and that's again the narrative. But who are the people controlling the narrative, protecting? Whose side are they on? If they're not on the side of President Trump, that's fine. But when it seems like they're not on the side of the American people, that's a problem. And when they ignore the plight of Americans, when they just basically act like publicists for the government, when they just continually put out these narratives to pit the left versus the right, red versus blue, and make everyone hate each other, it all becomes a pile of horse shit, you know. And people fall for it. People who maybe just read headlines or retweet headlines and don't read the articles. People who don't show up in real life. They're just on the phone all day. People who just know what their friend told them. You know, basically the grapevine. Oh, did you hear what Trump did today? they're missing the larger story. So then there was a virus. And the first places were in a place called Wuhan in China. And if you called it the Chinese virus or the China virus or the Wuhan flu or whatever, you were racist. Because apparently you can be racist against a virus. Of course not. But they turn that into somehow people being racist against Chinese people, which there's always going to be handfuls of ding-dongs who are racist against people for stupid reasons. And you can always point to those people. But when you point to those people and you start saying, well, because there's 3 racists over there, everybody they know and everybody they associate with and everybody who doesn't hate them must be racist too, or everybody on their block, or everybody, you know, oh, if those 3 racists voted for Trump, then everybody who voted for Trump must be a racist. Or if those handful of racists hate Chinese people, then everybody who voted for Trump must hate Chinese people. If those handful of people over there hate trans people, everybody who voted for Trump must be trans. That's what they did. That's the narrative. And this narrative has pitted people against each other. And it is on behalf of who? On behalf of who?